Okay, guys, welcome to the WSW West Side Wednesdays on a Tuesday virtual shear. This is our 10th shear, and this is Aryeh Zuber will be speaking and giving the shear, and the shear is dedicated Zecher Nishmat Avi Aviner Avraham Yitzhak Ben Chana. It's a close friend. He passed away around a month and a half from the virus. Avi Yitzhak Ben Chana. Should his neshama have an aliyah from the shirim that we are doing. And we daven for the refuah shleima of all those who are dealing with the virus and friends that need our davening. And I'll say them really quickly that we have here. Gimpel Mordechai Daniel ben Sarah Ita, Rabbi Pilam Dover ben Rachel Bela, Abraham Chai ben Shora Shendel, Baruch Shmuel ben Chaya Sarah, Miriam Rachel bat Meital, Shimon ben Dada, ben Sion Tzvi ben Chaya Yehuda Esther. And really everyone else that needs our tefillas now. And Pnina, at the end, if you want to add anything, Pnina Rapport, co-host, will add something. And with that, thank you to the amazing ladies that are on, and Aryeh for his time. We have Hillel and Aryeh who are switching off every 2 to 3 weeks on giving this year. So with that, I will turn it over to Aryeh, and in case we do go over and you guys lose it, I put it in there and I'll just message it to everyone as well for the second half. Okay, thank you so much, Aryeh.
All right, cool. So hopefully this will be a little more interactive than some of the ones that we've done in the past. And it's basically going to be echoing something that Rabbi Sachs said on this week's Parsha, Parshas Naso. So we begin with the Birchas Kohanim. So who knows what the Birchas Kohanim are? I see everybody's screens turned off. So Penina, what are the Birchas Kohanim?
Prayer. You want the words of the prayer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
יברכך השם וישמרך יאר השם פניו אליך ויפניך יישא השם פניו אליך וישמח שלום.
There you go. Yeah, no, you got it. So basically the translation, Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, that Hashem, God should bless you and protect you. Yar Hashem panav elecha, that Hashem should make his face shine on you. V'chunecha, and be gracious to you. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasen l'cha shalom, and God should turn his face towards you and should grant you peace. So, interestingly, these are among at least what we have record of, the oldest part of the Jewish tradition. And if I'm not mistaken, even back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are amulets, and even earlier there was an amulet, I believe, that was found that had these words inscribed in it, even prior to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So it's something that the Jewish nation has been using for a very, very long time. It's part of the foundation of Judaism, and it's an interesting bracha that we have. And obviously the Kohanim, we do duchening, as we call it, outside of the land of Israel. So the Kohanim say this to all the Jewish people several times a year, particularly on the Chagim, on the holidays. But in Israel, it's actually said every day. So we also, even not the Kohanim, but everybody says it in the morning during the Shacharis service, and some people say it at night, and many people bless their children on Friday nights using this bracha. And what is it about this bracha in particular that's sustained for so long, and why it's so significant? In part, it's the simplicity of it, right? Because it's basically only a few words. It's got a very simple structure. So you have 3 words, then 5 words, then 7 words, right? Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha is 3. Yar Hashem panav elecha v'chunecha is 5. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'chunecha yisa. Yar Hashem panav elecha v'chunecha yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasen l'cha shalom. So it's a structure of 3, 5, and 7. Makes it very easy to remember. As you may know, 7 is the amount of numbers that people are able to remember generally, hence phone numbers being 7 characters long. So there's 3 questions that Rabbi Sachs poses with respect to this bracha. The first one is, who says the bracha? Who blesses the Jewish people? So the answer, of course, is, as we said, the Kohanim. Why is it that the Kohanim are the ones that are instructed to bless the Jewish people? I mean, there's a bunch of other people that we would think should be blessing them. Say, for example, the Nevi'im that existed during the times of the Beit HaMikdash and during the times of the Mishkan, there were Nevi'im. And so when this bracha was established, the Nevi'im could have said it. Why was it that the Kohanim were chosen to say it? What about kings, right? There were kings, Malachim, that existed during that time. Maybe they should be the ones that should be saying this bracha. And maybe it should be the Sanhedrin, judges, leaders, people that were well-versed in Torah, right? The Talmidei Chachamim. Why was it that the Kohanim were the ones that were chosen to say this bracha? Does anybody want to venture a guess? Hearing none. We'll go.
Maybe because the Kohanim are holy, like they're the Beis HaMikdash and stuff. That's good. So what is holiness? That's true, right? Certainly the Kohanim are sanctified and they're sort of put on a plateau. They're the ones who spend all their time in the service of God. But so what? What does that have to do with blessing the Bnei Yisrael, the holiness that they have? Trying to think. I don't know.
No, it's a fair point. I mean, in fact, that is the opinion.
If they didn't, who would? Because like, who's going to qualify? Like, who's a rabbi? Who's not a real rabbi? Or like if they wouldn't, who would be? That's
an interesting point. So you're distinguishing, say, for example, in answer to my question of why not the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars. It's because that's very subjective, right? Who's a scholar? Who's not a scholar? Who makes that determination? Whereas a Kohen, they either were born to somebody that was a Kohen or they weren't. And that's how you know, right? It's a very objective standard. However, of course, there's other people that could be chosen to give the bracha, like a king, right? A king of Israel. There's very specific laws about who's a king. He has to be anointed with oil, and he has to be chosen by a certain group of people. So there are other objective criteria that could have been used to determine who gives the bracha.
But if it was a king, you don't always have a king.
Right, that's true. And the same can be said for Nevi'im, right? We don't necessarily have Nevi'im, and certainly nowadays we don't. So that's a good point, right? And Talmidei Chachamim, it's to your first point, which is that who chooses who's a Talmid Chacham and who's not. So yeah, that's actually a really good point, right? So it's basically Kohanim, it's a subjective group, it's an objective group, that it's based on ancestry and you either have it or you don't. And I mean, to your point about the Kedusha, about the holiness and the Kohanim being holy, that's in fact an answer that was given by the Chinuch, Sefer Chinuch. And the Sefer Chinuch says that the Kohanim were chosen to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. They were chosen to dedicate their lives to God. So they're the ones that were chosen to also give the blessings to the Bnei Yisrael. But he doesn't really explain what the connection is, right? He just says, they were the holy ones. There's specific why that relates to being able to give the blessing. All right, so that's one question. We're going to set that aside for the moment. We'll get back to it. The second question is, when the Kohanim actually do go up to bless the Jewish people, right? When they do stand up during the tefillah and they bless the Jewish people, they repeat after the chazan. There's a blessing that they say, right? Like with all mitzvahs, we always say a blessing before the mitzvah. So before the mitzvah of blessing the Jewish people, they make another blessing. Now, does anybody know what the blessing is? Asher Kidshanu. Panina, you want to finish it?
I don't know it.
Asher
By the way, I'm
Kidshanu.
about Cohen.
What's that? Oh, you're about Cohen? Oh, yeah, that's right. Rappaport is a Cohen's name. Asher Kidshanu Bikdushaso Shel Aharon, with the sanctity. So God who made us holy with the sanctity of Aharon, right? These are the Kohanim speaking. Vitzivanu, and commanded us, levarechas b'nei Yisrael be'ahava, and to bless Jewish people with love, right? That's the blessing. That's what they say right before they start off Yivarechecha. And it's an interesting blessing. Why? Because there's a word there that's unique, that we really don't find in any other blessings. Like the blessing you say before laying the Hanukkah lights, it doesn't have this extra word. What's the extra word? Bi'ahava, with love, right? There's no other mitzvah that we have a blessing with love before we actually go ahead and do the mitzvah. So what is it so unique about blessing the Jewish people that we introduce it with the fact that it relates to love? Any thoughts? Any further thoughts on that?
It's actually nice that it says Ba'ava. What do the other ladies think?
Well, Aaron was known to love people, so I don't know if that has to do with it.
That definitely has to do with it. And in fact, that's right? We say that you should be like the children of Aaron, who brought people together, who made people love each other. So definitely there's a connection there, because these are the Kohanim who are standing up and giving the bracha to the Jewish people. So there's definitely some connection to the concept of love vis-a-vis kahuna, and the concept of love as it relates to blessings. But what exactly is that connection, right? What does love have to do with blessings, or in particular blessing a community, the Jewish people? Why is there a relationship of love? Why is that necessary? And what does it have to do with the kahuna? So Chana said, yeah, definitely it has to do with the fact that they're the descendants of Aaron, who is known for introducing love and bringing people together to love each other. But what's the unifying thread here? What is it that's bringing these three concepts, kahuna, love, and the bracha of the Jewish people together? Right, and just to point out that all mitzvos, at least according to one opinion of the Talmud, so there's a machlokus in the Talmud, mitzvahs trichas kavana or mitzvahs ena trichas kavana. Does the performance of a mitzvah require kavana, require that you have intent or not? But just to be clear, that intent, that's the subject of that discussion. It's the question of whether or not you have to know what you're doing while you're doing the mitzvah in order to be Mekayim, in order to actually properly perform the mitzvah. So for example, if you heard shofar, but you didn't know it was a shofar, you thought it was somebody, making a noise, were you yotzei your mitzvah? That's the question of whether mitzvah is tzrichas kavana or not. But in all events, even if you are of the opinion that mitzvahs need kavana, over here, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about whether or not you know that there's a blessing coming or you're involved in the performance of the blessing, but rather the idea here is that there's an additional factor. You need to do it with love. And if you don't do the blessing with love, then the blessing won't work, as it were, whatever that means, right? And in fact, the Zohar says that a Kohen who does not love his people, who does not love the Jewish people, or is not loved by the Jewish people, should not do the Berchas Kahuna. So we see a definite connection between love and blessing, right? And I guess if you think about it, sure, blessings, love, it all kind of comes together, but what really is the concept? What does, in fact, cause there to be a relationship between these two ideas? All right, so that's the second question: is what's the relationship between love and the blessing? And then the third question is, why is it that we need to have the Jewish people be blessed by the Kohanim in any event, right? Well, why is it that we need the Kohanim to be the ones to bless the Jewish people? Why can't God just himself or God itself bless the Jewish people? Why do we need this human intermediary, right? It's kind of a unique thing in Judaism, this bracha that the Kohanim are giving to the Jewish people, right? We don't really find it elsewhere that Judaism requires any sort of intermediary. I mean, sure, Hasidic communities believe on some level that the Rebbe is acting as some form of an intermediary between his Hasidim and God, but we don't really find that in the basic sources of Judaism. This is sort of, to my knowledge, the only place that we do find that. So the question is, what's that relationship? Why do we need the Kohanim to be the ones to do the blessing? And why isn't it just God directly itself? Anybody have any idea? Panina, you still there?
I'm still here, but I feel like you need like Hashem. Hashem always blesses us, but you actually need like someone actually giving you a blessing. So I can understand why you have someone giving the blessing. I think that it would be just like one person to another as you like bless someone. It's an interesting concept that you have like one group of people that do it, but I wouldn't think that it's just God does it for you, you know?
So you're saying you understand just logically or kind of...
Where someone blesses you.
Right. And you need
like when
there
you
to be...
randomly tell someone, God bless you.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You say, God bless you, but as though you sort of need the person who's doing the blessing in order for the blessing to work. Like, God bless you, God should bless you because I'm saying that you should be blessed by God, but not God bless you, that there should be this automatic blessing that happens without me doing the action. So what's the idea here of an intermediary, of another person kind of directing God's blessings towards you? How does that work?
I can think of two reasons potentially.
Okay.
I'm sure there are probably others, but first is that you're introducing a community element to it. If another person has to do this in order, like you need that intermediary. It binds the community together, and it's not just that you're this individual person who has this relationship with God. It's that you're a people who have a relationship with God. So therefore, it may make sense for to keep the community together, to keep the people together, that they have to give the blessing to each other. But and then there's the second element I can think of where we're naturally loving as human beings, or at least that's what I think. And it almost seems like a way for God to allow us to express that love and be redeemed for doing so.
Interesting. Okay, so you're bringing two very good points, which are actually pretty much the answers that we're going to address, maybe in a little more detail. But first, you're saying that there's an idea of community, right? And we need to have a community together in order for the blessings to come. So the blessings are essentially coming not just because the person's saying, the blessings should be directed towards you, but rather because of the fact that the person is blessing the other person, and the Kohanim as a group are blessing the rest of the Jewish community. That itself is the cause of the blessings, right? That's the cause of the blessings being able to work. Am I articulating that properly?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's definitely a great answer. That's the first point. And your second point, I think, went more to the question of love and what love has to do with the idea of blessings. And what you're saying is that the blessings, again, focusing on how the blessings work or how the blessings are directed, it's on account of the fact that people are showing love to each other, right? That one person or a group of people, the Kohanim in this case, are showing love to the rest of the Jewish people. That itself is what causes the love, the bracha rather, the blessing to work. That's sort of instrumental in affecting the blessings, that the blessings are transmitted through the fact that people are loving of each other. Is that right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it even goes to like the intention of, you know, you're just commenting on that. It's not just that you're aware of like, you know, of the mitzvot. It's not just you're aware of like what it can do and like what you should do, but it's the fact that you need to express that love. That seems like that would be a core to the intention of the blessing.
Right. In order for the blessing, you're saying in order for the blessing to actually work, there has to be love imbued in it, in the process.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. No, and that's exactly right. So I'll just, basically describe the entire concept of the Dvar Torah, but let me kind of bring it together to kind of piece it back to where we started off. So first of all, we had asked these three questions, right? Why the Kohen? Secondly, why is love involved? And third, why does it have to be done through people? So to the question of why the Kohen, so we explained already the idea behind the Chinuch saying that the Kohanim were the ones who were consecrated to God, who were focused on, taking care of the sanctuary, of service to God. They dedicated their entire lives to God. And therefore, they're the ones who should be giving the blessing, which is, a very nice idea, but we still kind of need a little more to connect the concepts and to explain why the fact that they were holy relates to the blessing. An answer that's given by Rabbi Aaron Walken, who wrote Matzah Aaron, which Rabbi Sachs references, is, I thought, really interesting. He says the Kohanim were unique because they weren't allowed to own property, right? Like the rest of the land of Israel was distributed among the various Shvatim. The Kohanim didn't have a portion in the lands. They didn't have any ability to, and most of the people were farmers at the time, they didn't have an ability to have their own crops. So they were surviving off the karbanot that people would bring, and the charity, the meiser, the truma, all that was something that they were surviving off. So they really had a vested interest, in a sense, for the Jewish people to do well, right? The better the Jewish people did, because they were living off their charity, the more the Kohanim would get to survive. So because the Kohanim had sort of this vested interest, they were more likely to be interested in pushing the blessing, if you would, right? They were the ones who were most interested in and would have the most kavanah. They would have the most thought and the most involvement in truly bringing the blessing. So according to this opinion, in any event, the blessing is sort of comes to you through people. Like you actually need the person, and depending on the level of sincerity that the person who's giving the blessing to you has, that's the amount that the blessing will actually come true. So it's an interesting idea in how this individual, this person, Rabbi Walken, understands how the blessings work. And Rabbi Sachs gives some other explanation as to why it's Kohanim, but we'll hold that for now. The second question about love. So according to some opinions, the idea that the bracha, it says, that the Kohanim are commanded to bless the Bnei Yisrael ba'ahava, with love. Some people say that love doesn't mean that the Kohanim have to use love when they're blessing the Jewish people, but rather it's the fact that God, because of his love to the Jewish people, commanded the Kohanim to bless the Bnei Yisrael. So the love is actually going back on God, but not on the Kohanim. So that's one opinion, but the Pashut reading of the blessing is that the Kohanim are the ones who have to actually use love when they're transmitting the blessing. So why love? What does love have to do with blessings? Where else do we find in the Torah a blessing where somebody's giving a blessing to another person, and in order to give the blessing, there has to be some sort of love involved? Does anybody know? This is not a question I expect people would know right off the bat.
Aryeh,
Hey.
On that question, can we switch over just so you're not cut off?
Sure.
Let's leave everyone hanging a little. But okay, guys, I can resend it, but it's in there. I'll repost it. I think Leora is trying to get on here also. Can everyone head over there, please?
Sure.
With love, is that what we're leaving off with?
We're leaving off with.
We're leaving off with a question about love. Okay, guys? Hannah, Ariel, guys, go, go, go.